Hello, Think Liberty listeners. Welcome to episode 7 of Tales from the Shire. I am your host, AJ Olding. This week, we're going to examine the issues with public schooling. I have on today as my guest a public school teacher who was also a libertarian. I'm going to keep her anonymous throughout the episode, but we're going to go through her experiences within the system. We're going to go through the history of the education system here in the United States, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the solutions that we see to the problems that we're going to be going over. I think this is a great interview. Please enjoy.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for sitting down with me. So you teach at a public school and you're a libertarian, which is a very odd thing. Yeah, not very common among public school teachers. So I was wondering, how does that happen?
It was a happy accident the way it happened. I did other things for work before. I was a municipal employee before I was a teacher for many years, 18, 19 years. Decided I wanted to change in my career. And because I like to study and because teaching was so radically different from what I was doing from work, it seemed like the perfect fit for me. So I got my master's in education and moved on to the career of teaching almost simultaneous with my libertarian conversion. That happened during the 2012 Ron Paul campaign. So I didn't really enter teaching as a libertarian. Mm-hmm. It happened after.
Okay. As it was happening, like as you're working in this public sphere, do you immediately notice that clashes with kind of typically the environment that you're working in? And what is that like?
Yeah, I guess so. What makes my experience so different from your average teacher is that I don't believe the bureaucracy, I frankly don't believe that the bureaucracy was ever designed to deliver the thing that it promises. Great individual education and the self-actualization of children. Most people that are teachers, they believe that and they wonder why. Where has it gone wrong? What can we do to modify it? How can we reform the system to get it to give us what it's supposed to give us? I think it gives us exactly what it was designed to give us. It's just giving us more and more and more of it.
So, I mean, where do you think? Okay, so you bring up a lot of teachers think that it does give these things, or that
it was meant to.
That it was meant to.
Right.
And where do you think it goes wrong and I know you said it was designed to deliver those things, but everyone organized it in such a way that they wanted it to, or the majority of the public wants schools to deliver that way. Where do you think is the main disconnect between it actually delivering those things and, where it is?
Well, I think you have to go all the way back. To me, I read a lot of like John Taylor Gatto's work where he quotes the original funders of public education. And it wasn't their intent to create self-actualized, intelligent, thinking, independent people. That wasn't the goal of the system. And that's why no matter what we do to the system, we never get that. It actually does deliver exactly what it was designed to deliver.
Okay. So if it's delivering exactly what it was designed to deliver, and these people that John Taylor Goddard writes about got everything that they wanted, how could they have sold that to a group of people, to the public?
Well, with the barrel of a gun, frankly, is how it was done. In Massachusetts had the last holdouts. They would not send their children off to the state, and they were literally rounded up and marched at gunpoint. They were taken. So it was forced.
Okay. So is there anything that, yeah, that's Yeah, that's the state. That's
and
the
now,
whole story of it all.
what we have now is we have been, air quotes, educated to confuse things, to confuse this bureaucracy of school with education. We have trained the populace to believe that those two things mean the same thing when they don't. And because they don't mean the same thing, when we don't get educated kids from the school, the natural tendency of people is to cry out for more and more and more of the bureaucracy because they've been tricked into believing it is education, school. Okay. And therefore, because it's not working very well, we need it to start earlier. We need it to go later in the day. We need it to go longer in the year. We need to modify this curriculum point right here, or we need to change it a little bit or get more of it. But we've been trained to confuse a lot of things, like government programs with Social Security. They're not the same thing, but we've been tricked into believing that they are, and therefore there's a constant clamor for more of the bureaucracy because we're not getting the real thing.
Okay. So then so you're talking about all these people try to put little Band-Aids on it, fix curriculum points here, fix minor things there, and they think that that's just going to maybe magically help it all work out. What do you think is like the fundamental problem that those people might be missing as far as like what is standing in the way of schools teaching or public schools teaching kids to be independent and self-actualizing and whatever positive things we want?
A couple things. First of all, the system itself is set up as a factory. So in and of itself, the system itself, it cannot work. It doesn't matter how we tweak it. You can't take individuals, run them through a factory, and expect them to come out individuals because it can't happen. So, and they're too big. The machine is too big. It works for what it was designed to do, which was take individuals and make them be able to be fit like a little cog in a wheel on an assembly line to work in an industrialized world. The men that actually put the money into education had a vision of the future. They saw that you could take this energy, this combustible engine, and you could create assembly lines. They saw what we could do, and they had to change the people. You're not going to take independently minded, self-sufficient farmers and get them to work on an assembly line 8 hours a day with making this little widget and not rebel. So they had to change the people. So the first problem is that the system itself was designed to create not individuals, not deep thinkers, not people that find, problems in flaws in the current way things are done. It was designed to do the opposite. So until we can recognize that, it can't change.
Okay.
Because we have to jettison that whole system.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, I guess. So let's say hypothetically, like I have a kid who's coming in to be 5-6 years old, right at the time where they're going to go to first grade. What would you tell people who are in that situation, who are just about to send kids off to a school? Like, what is your recommended way to get schooling or education at this point in time? You got it.
Being a public school teacher. Now, I'm sure that there are some districts. There are some districts that are, quote, better than others mostly because of the resources that are available to the people that send their kids there, and how invested the parents are in the system, and so how much of it they'll support from home. But even those, my girlfriend lives over in, it's not much better. Mm-hmm. It really isn't. They're better at hiding it. They spend a lot more money to do it, that's for sure, and they have a lot more bells and whistles. But I wouldn't send my child to public school. I wouldn't. If I could go back in time and know now know then, what I know now, I would not send my child to public school.
All right.
You can't have 33 kids in a room.
No.
And think that you're going to have any individualized attention. And that's the other reason nothing can change, because we won't admit reality. We won't admit the truth. We want, we literally run around and say to ourselves, every child can learn, every child can be anything they want to be. Well, no. Not everybody can be a veterinarian. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not reality. What we should be doing is helping kids find out what they're really interested in, what their proclivities are toward, leaving every avenue open to the extent possible and helping them find what they're excellent at, but not lying to ourselves and them. So there's a lot of lying that goes on in the system, to itself, to the public, to the kids. It's not conducive to self-actualization. I would say if you have a young person, you find a way to get them the smallest type of educational experience they can have, either really literally homeschooling if you have it in you and you feel competent and confident in it, some kind of small school setting, education setting.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So going back to your worldview, you come to libertarianism right around the same time you come into teaching. Did you develop all these kinds of thoughts on the problems with the schooling system like at the same time, or was that kind of coming later in as you can see all the problems for yourself as you're teaching?
Yeah, I mean, having read the history of education through John Taylor Gatto's work, it didn't surprise me what I was seeing. I think I would have seen it. I might not have understood that it works because it was designed this way. I wouldn't have been able to figure that out, but I would have seen the insanity of it all. It's very far gone now. Mm-hmm. I was at a party last night. There was a woman that teaches down in, and the word she used for it is ugly. And it is. It's getting really ugly in there now. Mm-hmm. It's unraveling to the point where, so you have this machine that was built to feed people in and literally sort them into those who will do what they're told from those who will not. That's what its real function was. And the ones that would do what they were told would get out the other end and have this piece of paper. And the ones who would not would go back and work on the farms and stuff because they weren't suitable to be able to be organized in mass numbers. But what we have now is we have the same machine, but we don't let it sort anybody anymore. So you've got those who will not, and they're increasing in number, that will not do what they're told. They won't take their seat. They won't go sit where they're asked to sit. They won't do this. They won't be quiet. They won't, whatever it is, whatever you can point to. But we can't get them out. Mm-hmm. Because now everybody has a right to be there. And because the pressure is because
they call it a right, but it's really compulsory,
right?
Like,
exactly. It's the only thing that you are entitled to, that you're forced.
The state has to provide it, but at the same time, you also have to go.
Right, and it's the only thing you have to. It's the only thing you have to consume. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't have to drive on the state highway. I don't have to go to the library. Any public service you can think of, even if my house catches on fire, I don't have to dial the number to have them come. This is the only thing that you're forced to pay for and you're forced to consume. So that should give us pause right there.
So how much does the forcing kids into this shape into the breakdown of they don't come out independent, they don't come out self-sufficient?
Right. So completely. Mm-hmm. Right. And the other lie that we tell is that everybody needs to know the same stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't tell you the number of kids that I've watched now break my heart because they think at a concrete level, because that's neurologically where they are. Most people cannot think abstractly, biologically, until they're in their 20s. And we ask them, or we demand of them, that in order to graduate, they have to show me they understand photosynthesis and cellular respiration, and they understand how all these different parts inside the cell operate. Now, these are all abstractions. They're too small to be seen. And so if we were honest with ourselves, we would admit very few of them can really understand that. Mm-hmm. But yet we force them all through it. They all have to pass it or they can't graduate. And I watch them come in and they like me and I like them. And so because there's a genuine kinship here between the teacher and the pupils, they want and they trust me. They trust that I really do want what's best for them. And so they will suspend their disbelief to an extent and they'll try.
Yeah.
But you watch them struggle and feel stupid, right? And it's like, it breaks my heart. That person right there is being robbed of the chance to use this time to find out what they're excellent at, because they're excellent at something. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's building a house, which we all need to be alive and stay alive. So it's not less important to know how to build a house than it is to understand cellular respiration, probably much more important. People have gone through millennia not knowing what that was, but we all needed to have shelter. And yet he can't figure it out that he's an excellent builder and self-actualize and feel like he's smart, which he is, because he's made to feel stupid every day.
Right. So I guess in the current education system, the division of labor or the paths to division of labor typically start after high school, and they're in the college sphere. And college just has a ton of problems as well. But it sounds to me like if we are to keep a public schooling system, you believe it would be much better to start that kind of division earlier on?
I don't think we should divide it at all. I think what we should do is what Ivan Illich said, and that is you get 12 years of public education on a debit card. We'll have the lights on for you. We'll keep a registry. People that are really excellent welders that want to be put on the registry, and at some point in your life, welding is something you want to learn. You come to the state, you look at the registry, and you go and you use some of your hours on your debit card for that. You want to come and you want to spend your first 7 years of education in this system that we have right now. Well, we'll be here and we'll do it that way, and you can use your years that way. You want to be homeschooled right straight through high school and use that money to go to college instead? Cool. And if we did that, everything changes. There's no division. There's no having to decide. There's no sorting. And the entire idea of a high school dropout evaporates in the heat of the truth, that it doesn't matter. And that I'm not done yet. I still have more time that I can use. I'm 68 years old and I haven't used all my time yet. And now and we would be so smart as a society, because if a kid came to me saying, I want to understand biology, it makes sense in my life now, or even a young adult or an old adult, I could teach them in 3 weeks what I can't teach someone in a year against their will. So how are we going to make a smarter society that way? You know? And Ivan said, oh, I know what you're going to say. Well, what about the poor kids? They won't go. They won't go to school. They'll be kept out. Well, you could even give them an extra year to make up for the fact that, whatever. We could fashion a new system, completely new system that would have everybody learning what they want to learn when they want to learn it, and then they would actually know it.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes a ton of sense to me. Who is this? Is Ivan Illich?
Ivan Illich. He wrote a book, and it's online. You can read it for free. Deschooling Society. And actually, it was him that I quoted earlier when he said it. School, and especially the poor, realize this. It teaches us to confuse things and grade completion with competence. A diploma with the ability to say something new. Right? How many of us have passed a class and therefore think we know what this subject matter is, when all we really knew was how to make the teacher happy, how to do what was needed to get the grade, but we really didn't understand any of it.
Well, so the diploma thing's very interesting, and I'm trying to recall from memory, so I may be doing this completely wrong. I think it was a guest on the Tom Woods show like a year and a half ago, something like that, who was talking about the difference in how much money someone can earn, whether they have a college degree or not, and then versus whether they only completed some of college. Like, it doesn't scale. The diploma's worth, more than twice as much as just going to 2 years of college is worth. But if we thought of education in just years of education or competency based off of classes, well, the person who goes to college for half as long as the person who gets their diploma shouldn't have that much of a gap. Like, the gaps we're seeing are much larger. So
right, because now it's a ticket into the workforce. It's not, if you talk to old time firefighters, you're likely to hear the story that when they were hired, people had high school diplomas. And it's true, a lot of it was like, oh, my uncle was on the force or whatever, like how they got the job, who knows. But they were high school graduates that went into that. And now everybody has to have a college degree to get the interview. And the old timers will tell you they're worse than the new hires used to be because they think they know things, right? They've confused grade completion with competence. Whereas when a new hire would come in before as a, trainee, they were open to being shown what to do. I mean, you have to have you go to the bank, you ask your bank teller, what's your degree in? I remember asking one down here in my little hometown, criminal justice. Well, what's that got to do with doling out money at a bank? Nothing. But you need a degree in something, anything, to get the interview. So that's why there's this huge difference in what you can earn, not because it's real, but because we've created the society now that has made it real. Mm-hmm. In a fake way, you need a diploma.
Yeah. So I think about like what I do for work outside of podcasting. I don't actually make money at this. Is like engineering consulting. And we interview kids out of college all the time. And they're all great kids. They can all do the work at the introductory level that we want them to come into. But like, if I had control over hiring, I'd start talking to kids right out of high school. I'm like, I think it's more efficient to teach these people how to do what we're doing over like 2 years on the job than it is to let them go to school for 4 years. Like, we can pay them a little less too. 'Cause like,
right. They'd be happy to have the job. They'd be grateful. Mm-hmm. And yeah. So Ivan Illich, again, he has another good idea how to take care of this problem where now you need these pieces of paper from these learning institutions in order to buy your way into the workforce. And he says, you just add another thing to the list of things that you can't ask about as an employer. So it's already illegal for me to ask, are you gay? And use the answer as whether I let you have a job or not. Or are you a Buddhist or a Protestant? Oh, yeah, well, no, I only hire Protestants. So we've already got a situation where there are things that are legally taboo, not allowed to ask. And you could add one more thing. Where did you get your knowledge? You can't ask if they went to college. And it would just be create some way of screening. What is it you want out of your bank tellers? What do they need to know to be able to walk in there and start that job? And now screen for it. Find out, can they add? Have a test. The post office has a test that they screen people before they ever see them or talk to them. And so if we could stop that from being a barrier to employment, that would do more to help level the playing field in these divergences that we see in different populations. Like your poor black kids from the city, their chances of ever breaking out are so low. We're starting to like stratify, have actual hardened caste system almost now. But if it wasn't the case that, I didn't go to college and therefore I'm shut out of every job that you could actually raise a family on, then it would change it. It would go back to a merit-based sort of society. And we would have very few people that chose to go to college. And that would solve another problem. and that the colleges would have to reduce their tuition post haste. Half of them would just go under, which they should.
Yep.
And the other half would stop offering, riding arenas and exotic meal plans from all over the planet. And kids go to college now. They live 4 years as if they're in some kind of an all-inclusive resort, and then they spend the next 30 years of their life in poverty trying to pay for it instead of the other way around.
That's exactly what it is. And I've had conversations with people who then later go to like community college, and they're like, oh yeah, community college was a much better use of my time because everyone there was a little older and everyone there cared solely about getting their education to get out so they could go do what they're after. I went to, I won't name the college, but I went to a college that if you look in U.S. News and World Report, top 50 in the country, and we wasted a lot of time on whatever fun thing it is that we wanted to do that the college provided and whatever else. And I talked to friends of mine who are just like, oh, I'm just at the community college, or I'm just taking a class online or whatever else. And I'm like, all right, I spent $50,000 a year and you're spending a couple grand, and you're coming out like, I know the degree's different. I know that employers are going to look at my degree a little better, but like, I know the truth that it's not like,
right.
I'm not going to tell my employer that, or when I go try to find a job, like,
right.
I'll play it up like, yeah, U.S. News and World Report, top 50, but I know that doesn't mean anything.
Right. Yeah. They're tricked too. That's how it all works, is that the employers are tricked into believing that grade completion equals competence. And so they think that they're getting a better pool of people by limiting the pool to those people that have that grade completion, when it isn't, in fact, the case. And as the system is unraveling in the lower school ages, as it becomes more and more impossible to even have anybody, I mean, like I saw Betsy, what's her name? Betsy DeVos or whatever. I think Trump's education woman. Yep. She was on the other night trying to justify something he wants to do. And she quoted a statistic. 2 out of 3 kids in the 8th grade don't read at 8th grade level anymore. 2 out of 3. This is nationwide. In some areas, it's much, much worse, obviously, to get it to average to that. So as it unravels below, the colleges are finding that they can't pump the people through anymore. In the past, they didn't care because, if a quarter or a half of the freshmen they drop out within the first year and a half, 2 years, they didn't care. They had a steady supply in new bodies to come in on the other end of the pipeline. Mm-hmm. But now the feds are saying, yeah, not so fast. We're not going to back up your loans anymore unless you find a way to keep these people in and get them through. And the only way to do that is to ratchet it all down. And that's what will happen. And so these employers are going to be duped into thinking that this grade completion is the same as a superior pool of people, and it isn't going to be. Mm-hmm. I mean, it already isn't, but
yeah, I've had my suspicion that the actual amount of learning that goes on at universities has been going down, like as the cost is going up and as the need for it is going up. It's a recipe for a lot of bad things, I think.
Yeah.
So I guess.
So it's but you have to look at the people that work in the system. They look at the reality. If little Johnny does not graduate from high school, he is not going to be able to get a job pumping gas. He is going to be relegated to a life, not of poverty, of abject poverty, of grinding poverty that he will likely never be able to get himself out of. And because the stakes are so high now that anybody that doesn't have a high school diploma, you got to get them through. And so what you end up with is these, quote, summer school classes that somehow in 2 weeks they learn what they couldn't learn in 9 months. And everybody's just moved through the system one way or another, by hook or crook. You get them through. And the answer isn't to just keep dumbing it all down to the point where it's meaningless. The answer is to not make it so drastically important that you have the piece of paper in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah. And how do you do that now? There's really I think Ivan is right. There's only one way. Make it illegal to ask. Make it literally illegal to ask if you have a high school diploma or anything. Mm-hmm. right? Show me. I know what I need from my employee. Now, do you have it?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean, I like to know how many libertarians think it should be legal. Perfect world, we wouldn't have any laws at all. We'd all be angels and we wouldn't need a government. So, but let's say, I'm trying to think of something that would be near and dear to a libertarian's heart. Let's say, should a public employer be able to say, oh, you're gay? Yeah, no, you're not even going to get an interview. You're gay? I'm not going to rent my apartment to you. No, I don't like your lifestyle. Get out of here. Like, a lot of libertarians might have a problem with that.
Right.
Right? So the moment you will agree that anything should be illegal to discriminate based on, you've now opened the door for me to say, well, then let's add another one.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't quite know how I feel about that one. I think it might work. I don't know about if I agree with the ethics of that, but I just think, and maybe this is, wishful thinking on my part to think it's possible. I think we need to get to a point where we're putting social pressures on employers to say, like, hey, it is an absolute waste of your time to employ this way, and you should be looking for competence rather than degrees, or competence rather than diplomas and whatever else. I don't know. I think we could go down that rabbit hole for
maybe
ever.
it might work out. It might happen that way, that the product of these machines that we built becomes so defective that of necessity they'll have to look in some other way to find people to work. But we might be wishful thinking there, because people have been very well habituated to the idea that school equals education.
Yeah. Well, like, I've been looking into myself doing continuing education, but like almost none of it, like at a college. Like, I see a seminar for like Scrum product development, and I want to go to that and look into that. Or I see like someone teaching Six Sigma or lean manufacturing, and I'm interested in that. I would much rather go get like a certificate in that, where I go listen to a couple lectures for a weekend and run through some practices with them and like actually learn it, than go back to college. It just seems like a complete waste of time. Mm-hmm. At some point, I hope education, and this is a little bit in line with Ivan Illich's idea, I think I'd like to see education be very modular, where it's like, I'm going to go for this class and it's going to take me 2 weeks. I'm just doing this class for 2 weeks, and then maybe a month later, after I've worked for a little bit more, I go take another class, and like over time, all of that kind of builds a competency that would replace like a traditional diploma. And I know that's what I'm talking about right there is very, very different than how we see education today. But like, I think that would be the efficient way that I would want.
Yeah, that is pretty much his idea.
Yeah.
Right? You just go with what you want when you want it. And if you do it when you want to, you're going to learn it because you want to learn it.
Yeah. I think that's great. So going back to you as a teacher, and I was wondering, when it comes to helping students be individual and self-actualized, are there practices that you take while you're teaching to try to help out with that and try to fight back against the system? Not necessarily spread libertarianism to kids, but like just the idea that you are an individual, like you can do these things on your own. You don't need, So
the first thing I do is I start the school year the same way every year. And I tell them, I want you to close your eyes, and I'm not going to take any notes. I'm not noticing who's answering. Okay. So don't worry about that. How many of you would not be here if you weren't required by law to come? Who wouldn't come at all every day? And a good number of the hands go up.
Like more than half?
Oh, yeah. Depends. Like, so when I was at the high school level in lower leveled classes, way more than half. By then they've been sorted, And I tell the kids, if it were up to me, I'd open the window and I'd let you run outside and run down the road and not be here at all, because you can't make anybody learn anything against their will. And I know that. And if you want to learn biology, I'm here to help you learn it. My hope is that I make you see how beautiful the natural world is, but I would not make you stay here against your will. But then I go on to tell them, but it's not up to me. Mm-hmm. And I can't change the system. And I'm going to tell you this, and I want you to go home and think about it. If you don't get the most that you can out of this place, the state took your youth and you got nothing in return. You gave it all away for free. So don't worry about making me happy. Don't even worry about making your mother happy. Just realize that something that cannot be bought, this day will never be here again, was taken from you against your will. And now, reach out and get everything you can for it in whatever way you can here. And that's one small way that I try to light a fire that whatever it is they want, right? Like, and I'll tell them, you may not find it interesting, this information, but learn how to wrestle with information that you don't find interesting at the moment. Learn that for yourself so that when you need to do it, you can. You know, like there'll be some time that you need to open that manual about how to run that machine that you have, or something is going to happen in your life. You're going to need to read that lease, and it's going to be difficult. And if you can't make yourself pay attention to something that you don't really find enjoyable, you're going to suffer. So use this to get everything you can out of it. So that's one way I do it. There are other ways that are more esoteric that I can't really probably explain too quickly.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So I was hoping that to kind of end and kind of wrap up, you could tell, you told me a story several months ago about taking these kids out to do yoga, and you got into some trouble with
I did a cop block.
People.
I did some cop blocking.
Yeah, and I was hoping you could tell that story.
Well, so it was a special week at the school where they had like a lot of chaos going on. It was like, homecoming week or whatever, for lack of a better term. And so it was the last day before vacation on a week that was out of control. And I decided that I would offer the kids to let them do yoga. And they all wanted to, obviously. So I went and I asked the boss, the principal, if we could use the courtyard, which you can see from the room that we were in. And it was very derelict looking space. It was dirty and dingy looking, and no one ever went out there, although the space was designed to be used by the young people that go there. It was not used. So I thought, well, let's go use it, So I got permission and we went out. Well, here's the problem. There was a killdeer, which is a little bird, nesting. They're ground nesters. So she had her little nest on the ground, and it was in the center of this little courtyard area, and there was a U of pavement nowhere near her. And I told the kids, you have to stay on the pavement because look at the little nesting bird. And we had just, in the science wing, we had just had chickens hatch for a couple weeks. So they were very interested in birds. They liked the bird. They loved the bird. They didn't want to hurt the bird, and they were acutely aware that in that egg is a little bird, and nobody was going to hurt it. So we go out and we start doing our yoga, and all of a sudden the door opens, and one of the staff members is like, you could see the look of concern. And I'm like, oh, I got permission. And I was asked, oh, really? By who? Oh, yeah. The principal said we could come out here. Oh, well, first of all, you asked me how I operate as a libertarian. It's a very Kafka way of doing things. You use whatever the bureaucracy allows, and you use it until you break the system. So he describes like gum chewing was allowed. Right. And so you do it so much and so often in so many places that it breaks the system. Okay. So you use the language of the bureaucracy, and you can get away with a lot of things. So when I went to ask permission, can we use the courtyard? And I was asked for what purpose. I said to do an exercise in structure and function, which is one of our competencies that we didn't really follow. Amazing. But I was able to use the language because it's the structure and the function. And I thought, perfect. And so I got, oh, sure, yeah, go out and do it. So I'm like, I got permission. And, but the bird. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we see the bird. We'll be careful. We're not going anywhere near the bird. You sure? Because the bird's very important to me. No, the bird's important to us too. Yeah, we're going to be real careful. So they go back in and we begin again. And we get halfway through the tree pose and out comes the school resource officer with another, 2 of them in uniform, standing with hands akimbo and ordering me to leave the courtyard. Gonna have to ask you to leave this area. And I said, oh, yeah, no, we're good. We got permission to be here. And you could see that took them aback a little, that somebody would say no, right? I wasn't defiant. I just figured they had their facts wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, no, we got permission. We're okay. Well, I was asked by... But I'm telling you, you have to leave here. And I said, I heard you, but I'm telling you that I have permission by the principal to be out here with my class. So we're good. Well, I've been asked by staff to have you leave here. And I said, listen, I don't know who you're talking about, but I was told by the chief of staff himself, the person that has the ability to give or take away permission, that I could come out here. So please, get on your walkie-talkie and verify what I'm saying to you. So the walkie-talkie is fired up and the window flies open and the principal yells out, oh, I forgot the bird. Get on out of there. And I was like, fine. So we go to leave and the kids file in all dejected. And as I'm walking by, they're standing quite powerfully, sort of in my way. And I try to walk around them, and the male of the 2 says, I don't appreciate what you did right there. And I said, well, what did I do? You disrespected Officer so-and-so. And I said, no, I didn't disrespect her. She told me to do something, and I told her, no, I don't need to do that. That's not disrespecting her. And he goes, well, when a police officer gives an order, you're to follow it without question. You're setting a bad example to the kids. And I said, oh, you and I couldn't disagree more there, okay? No, you're not to set the example to these young people that I am to follow blindly any order given by a police officer, whether they have the right and the authority to give it or not. You didn't have the authority to tell me not to be in the courtyard. So if anybody was doing the wrong thing, it wasn't me, okay? But, so no. Bad things happen. I said, and while we're on that subject, this is why we can't have nice things in these places, all right? Here we are on a nice day. The sun is shining. The bird is happy, not being bothered. The kids are out here playing yoga. And for some reason, somebody doesn't want me out here, and they go running to the police to tell them to get my neighbor off that yard. I want to use it for something else. You know, why? Because you think that bird is in some sort of danger, and it isn't. So you got this preconceived notion about the way things need to be done, and it's wrong. But you're not willing to even look at the notion to see, oh, wait a minute, I'm wrong here. Let's reassess what we were going to do. And she goes, well, I'm not a biology teacher. I don't know if the bird is in any danger. And I said, but I am. And I'm telling you, they have telltale signs that if they're endangered, they feel stressed, they do a certain thing. She's not doing it even now. Here we're talking about her, I'm pointing at her. She's blissfully unaware that she's even the topic of our conversation. And besides the fact, there are 10 pairs of these nesting in the front yard where there's thousands of pairs of feet walk by every day. Where's the police cordoning off? Where's the concern? What are you telling me, that 1 is a tragedy and 10 is a statistic? Because that's a good teachable moment right there. Right? But so anyway, I said, be this all as it may, I need to get back to my class, because there were a lot of little faces pressed against the glass watching the courtyard now, everywhere.
From like other people's classes.
From everybody's classes and from all the administrative wing, which also looked out onto the courtyard. So I'm like, I got to get back to my class because they're all in the room. And as I go to walk by, I say, you know, no offense here. Okay, not trying to cause you any problems or create a difficulty. I'm just, it must be the libertarian in me. Where's your warrant, officer? Right? And I put my hands up in the air and roll my eyes. I'm making fun of myself is what I'm doing there, right? So I go back to my class and the kids are like, what's the matter? What is this? Attica, why can't we use the courtyard and all this stuff? And the phone rings not 3 minutes later, and it's the administrator. I need to see you down here right away, right as soon as your class is over. Fine. And I go down and, what happened? What you upset the police officer. And so we go on about how, listen, they're thinking the bird is in danger. And he's like, don't talk about the bird. I already called what did he say? He said he called the fish and game department. So he got on the phone to the fish and game department and learned that as long as you're not more than 10 feet close to the bird is fine. Like I told him all in the first place. And he goes, what's this got to do with you being a libertarian? And I go, nothing. He goes, then why did you say it? I said, I didn't. I made a joke about it after it was all over. Okay, I made a joke at myself. Oh, it must be the libertarian in me. Where's your warrant, officer? It's a joke, trying to make it nice and light. He goes, well, they don't know you're joking. How do they know you're joking? And he's yelling. And I said, well, I thought it was self-evident. They don't need a warrant to talk to me in the courtyard. All right? I thought they understood that. So I'll make sure that I know that they don't need a warrant to talk to me in the courtyard. They weren't seizing my person or papers, so I thought they understood it was a joke.
The police don't get jokes.
But yeah, it was just unbelievable. So I had a dream after that I made a bumper sticker. And it was like the new agey coexist, right? And the X on the exist was like this little thing that a nest was in the crook of, and the bird was sitting in the nest. And the C for co was me doing the half moon pose because it looks like a C. Right. So like the yoga and the bird could coexist. And they could have coexisted and everybody would have been better for it.
Probably,
the kids would have seen the bird and been appreciating nature, which means the birds are safer if people appreciate it, and everybody could have been happy. But what it really boiled down to is that there was many adults in the building that are so sad because it is so ugly, like that woman said the other night, that looking out their window at that bird provided a small amount of comfort and ease to them. It took the stress away, and it was so frightening to them that something could happen to the bird that they couldn't even stop and hear. We won't touch the bird, and if the bird shows any signs, we'll leave. Like they were just so scared to lose that small comfort that they get from, a break from the chaos. I don't even blame them, it is so bad. But yeah, that's my bird yoga story.
All right.
Cop blocked.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. This seems like a great place to wrap up. Is there anything else that I should have asked you about or that you want to impart on? All right. No. Thank you very much then.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to episode 7 of Tales from the Shire. I hope you all enjoyed that, and I hope that you got a little bit out of this. Hope you understand a little bit more about some of the issues facing us today in the education system, and maybe got a couple ideas on how you might address education for your own kids in the future. I think this was a great use of our time. I think this is going to be a great resource to go back on and check in the future. Next week, I'm going to have on a representative from the nation of Liberland, and we're going to talk about the freest country in the world, or what we hope might become the freest country in the world someday. If you want to support the show, you can find us on Patreon. Just search Think Liberty and we'll come up. You can do that on all social media, on all the major social media networks as well. You should be able to find us. And as always, please share this podcast with all of your friends on all of those social media sites as well.